Countdown, start. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, the sun is out. It's very bright. It's very
too
nice,
bright.
but it's not necessarily shining on the Giants. But here,
good segue.
Yes, on this early Saturday morning, which is rare for us, we'll try to preview the Giants Commanders game and kind of the Giants in general. So first off, there's only water today. It's too early.
If we were drinking at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning, someone would have to call somebody.
I know it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but nowhere here, that's for sure. So
sorry, San Fran Giants.
Yeah. So it's just a Dasani water. Sorry. So here we are, week 9, and once again, I believe it's like 5 out of the last 6 years. We are 2-6 after 8 games. I know. Let's talk about one of the things that came up on BBI, BigBlueInteractive.com, is the concept of how do you take a look at the games, the team itself, but each game, and not just be negative, as some say, because they feel it's a toxic kind of thing. But yet at the same time, how do you avoid anything that ends up ultimately making you seem like a homer if you don't really call what it is?
Yeah, there's a poster on, God love him, on BBI who accused me of hating the Giants because I'm so negative. So my secret plan was to start a website in 95 and undermine the New York Giants for the last 30 years because I hate them. Like you said, we've got, 2-6 or worse, 7 of the last 8 years, I think it was.
I believe so.
I don't know. I mean, unless you want me to sit here and be like, everything's fine, this is just a bump in the road. I don't know what you want us to do. We're reacting to what we're seeing. This is a disaster. And, Brian Daboll and Joe Shane came in 2022 and they went 9-7-1. And then last year they went 6-11. And this year they're going to be hard pressed to reach that record. So it's going down.
Yeah, it's trending down.
I mean, and I don't think anyone who has listened to us and anyone who has read anything that I've written comes away with the impression that I think really negative things about this team other than one position right now. I think the rest of the team is not great, but I think there are some really good players on this team, like really good players like Dexter Lawrence and Andrew Thomas when he's healthy. But I think we're not dramatically worse than the rest of the league except one position. And I think that still, for whatever reason, that still strikes a nerve with some fans. And I can't fathom anymore why it does, because we're not talking about some icon we're not talking about Eli Manning. We're not talking about Phil Simms here. Hell, we're not even talking about Kerry Collins. Hell, I would argue Dave Brown was a better quarterback, because again, we've got a quarterback. We're halfway through the season. He hasn't thrown a touchdown at home. I throw these stats out to my wife and she's like, holy blank. It's just, how do you play 4 games and not have a touchdown pass at home? And that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you think we're being overly negative, I don't know what you expect us to be. We're 2-6. And again, I'll throw it to you. Don't you feel like this is just another wasted season? It feels like we're just treading water and we're just waiting for the inevitable, and the inevitable is getting rid of the albatross around our neck. And
yeah, so it's really weird, because it isn't just that it's feeling like a lost season. It's also the pieces that are being, I won't say portrayed, but it's the front that is being given And I know we always refer to it as coach speak. Even if the Giants were winning, we know we're going to get coach speak. They're not really going to tell us things beyond what you saw and what they want you to know. I get that. But it's the oddity of what you're hearing now versus what you would think you'd be hearing. What I'm hearing a lot now is this constant. Someone mentioned it was on Facebook. I can't remember her name. She actually has a bunch of sports stuff that she does on Roku. Bunch of different people do different shows on a Roku channel that she seems to run. And she compared Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones and said Daniel Jones's stats are better than Anthony Richardson's. And I'm like, yeah, but here's the difference. Anthony Richardson combined probably has 20 total starts in his entire career, not the NFL. Quarterbacking in general, he only started 13 games in college.
That's
he was
incredible.
injured a great deal the year before. He's been injured off and on this year. He has not been good. That's true. Totally true. But if we're talking a guy who's been in the league 6 years, plus he started multiple years in college. He was trained by, was it David Cutcliffe in college, the Manning guru guy. And here you are, and we're saying things like he showed some emotion. He throws it to the right.
It's true though. I'm laughing because it's true.
That's what was said. And then he throws it to the right guy. He's making good decisions. Yeah, but they're shitty passes. So what I don't understand is it's almost like we're propping the guy up like he's a rookie, and you're worried that his mental psyche is going to be broken. This dude's mental psyche was broken in 2021. I don't know what the hell we're doing now, but to build this up, I'm not understanding. That's the part I don't understand.
Yeah, so people like to use the Phil Simms analogy with him about the injury history and all that. So when Phil Simms got 6 years into the league, he exploded. That, remember, in '84 season,
sure.
He had these receivers that they had. He even admits it. Well, I didn't know what we had, because they had Bobby Johnson and Lionel Manuel. These guys were, they weren't
Byron Williams.
Era when they were 12-round drafts. There were, one guy wasn't drafted, another guy,
right?
Lionel Manuel was 7th round or something like that.
He was 7th round.
Yes, and Byron Williams was this. We've talked about him. He was a flash in the pan, but he didn't have receivers. And yet Phil Simms goes on and throws fourth in a time when it was much harder to throw the football. The rules were completely different. The Giants didn't really have a running game in '84, and he threw for 4,000 yards and what was it, 22 touchdowns or something like that. 22 touchdowns or whatever. Here we are in 2024. Got Malik Nabers, we got Wan'Dale Robinson, we got Darius Slayton. They improved the offensive line. They get a new tight end, and this guy can't throw a touchdown pass. And so, again, the excuses. Again, everything was geared, and I don't want to spend the whole show on Daniel Jones.
No.
Everything was geared. Again, Hard Knocks, whether you liked it or not, everything was geared to allow Daniel to succeed this year, and he's failed miserably. And anybody who can't see it at this point, I don't know what you're looking at.
It's even worse than it seems, because we use 22. I will say I did too. We use 22 as kind of the barometer, so to speak, of like, that's what we can expect from Jones. And if we give him better receivers,
sure, it was the highlight of his career.
Yeah, more touchdown passes, maybe a few less, especially coming off an ACL, less rushing touchdowns, more touchdown passes. What you're seeing though is in 22, he had 22 total touchdowns, 15 passing, 7 rushing touchdowns. They were, at this point now, you almost have to see it as they were manufactured touchdowns, because you've got better players now. Yes. But the same stuff that we try to do with him doesn't work anymore. No one's falling for he's going to fake it and run the other way. If it is, he's faking it, and now he's having to go back and look at the highlights. Go look at Seattle. Go look at earlier against Washington, and I think it was Cleveland as well. He's powering through guys. That's very dangerous, by the way. But it's no longer just running free and picking up 12, 15 yards and a first down, and okay, now the drive continues, like against Minnesota, where he had a lot of runs against Minnesota. None of that is happening anymore. So now you take that and say, okay, well, he's got to throw. Well, he's not throwing touchdown passes. You brought up Phil Simms. Great it's a great point. It's not a good analogy for people that keep trying to do it, because Phil Simms, by the way, in his rookie year, I believe he threw 5 touchdown passes in a game. Ernest Gray, I think, caught 4 of them.
Yeah.
So Daniel Jones' best game ever, as far as like production and whatever, unfortunately, it's going to tie into this preview, was against the Commanders. I believe it was the end of the 2019 season, where I think he throw 4 or 5 touchdown passes.
4 touchdowns.
Caden
Right?
Smith had a couple of them. Barkley had a long one. I mean,
he threw me as many touchdowns in that game as he has all year.
Right. So if you look at it, if you look at the way it's gone, his entire production keeps coming down. So if 22 now is the benchmark, we're not even getting close to that. So it's the same as the record with Dayball. Started higher, the last year injuries comes down. Now we're looking like we're going even lower. Jones's production keeps coming down. We keep adding things to try to help him, and it gets worse. So the problem that I have now, because I guess you could say I was probably still one of the more optimistic people over the summer, even though I said he's not here next year. The Giants made that very clear in Hard Knocks that they were looking for somebody else. They just didn't get the guy they wanted. And after that, I know there's an argument, should have just taken another quarterback, but that's not what they were thinking. And you can't always do that. If you had Nabers rated really high, you kind of almost have to take him. You don't take a lower quarterback just to take if you don't think he's going to play. They could be really bad at judging quarterbacks, by the way. I'm not.
That could be a problem.
I'm not defending that. But so here you are, and I knew he was going to be gone, but he has gone so far backwards. So Carl Banks said something, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to tag him later too, because I've tagged him multiple times. He's liked some of the stuff that I put out there, including mentioning I want him on the show. So I do want Carl Banks to come on the show. Carl, I want you to come on the show. He said that some people have now made it their life's work to basically crap on Daniel Jones. And my question to Carl Banks is this: if you and LT and Leonard Marshall, and let's say Harry Carson at the time, but let's say even after Harry Carson, Pepper Johnson, if you guys were on a team and your quarterback, and you were on the team for let's say 5 years, and your quarterback's been there for 5 years, and the best you can come up with is a 9-win season, which you barely got into the playoffs, was extremely manufactured. He gets a bunch of money, and his production keeps going down, 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 to the point that every time something bad happens, everybody knew it was going to be Daniel Jones that did it. Are you going to have the same attitude as that player as you seem to as a commentator now? Are you okay with, oh, don't shit on Daniel Jones? Jones is the one constant across 3 coaches and 2 general managers. I don't know what else to say by it.
Look, the counter argument to that is this: is the internet's forever. You and I are on tape a couple months ago or a month and a half ago, sticking up for Daniel Jones and saying, give him another chance. So all our preview shows going into this season, we were actually optimistic. We predicted a winning season.
We did, yeah.
And that's where the beer probably came in with me. I don't know, but somebody tweeted out at me going, you're the jackass who predicted that they'd win this year. And I'm like, yeah, I did. So we didn't come into this thing going, we came in saying, just like Joe Shane basically said. So Carl, is Joe the same way? He said, he's going to have to sink or swim. Well, guess what? He's sinking. So we didn't come into this going, we came in this with doubt in our minds, which we should have. But the thing I want to touch what you just said, and it was another great phrase that you used, manufactured his productivity in 22. If it was possible to manufacture productivity for a quarterback on a consistent basis, everybody would do it, and nobody would be worried about drafting the next great quarterback.
Right, exactly.
So they were able to get away with that for a while, again, against teams that kept being undisciplined on defense and not protecting against that. They would do the RPO stuff, and again, we talked about the backside, they wouldn't protect it, and the end would always bite down, and Daniel would run around until they figured it out. So that stopped working. And the biggest, the elephant in the room in this is why didn't Joe Shane and Brian Daboll realize that they had to do that with the offense because of Daniel's limitations, and because of that, they should have said, we're not going to give him this contract because we're having to do this just to have him succeed. So he's not the guy. But they went in the opposite direction. They gave him a buttload of money. So the question this is the biggest problem now. It's, again, I kept saying in previous shows, Daniel Jones is just a symptom of all of this. Is what is the front office and what is the coaching staff doing at this point? Because it doesn't seem it was the wrong decision to give him that contract. And I don't see any upside to playing him right now. And I just see risk. And I would be, and again, I want to beat a dead horse, but again, I would be much more interested in this weekend's game if another quarterback was playing. Now I'm just like, and even if we win, I mean, like, great. I mean, so what? Daniel's still on his way out. He's not the answer. So we beat the Commanders. Big deal. I'd rather get DeVito in there and see where are the problems. I mean, if DeVito comes in and the Giants lose 30-3 and DeVito gets picked off twice and looks horrible, so be it. But if he comes in and he throws 3 touchdowns, maybe that's why they're not doing it.
There is some train of thought to that. Like, is there worry that if we do put this guy in and he actually does something, it's going to be like, why the hell didn't you do that before? I can't imagine that's really the worry.
No, but
they keep talking about. So before we get to the game itself, because I do want to get to the game itself, I want to break down just a couple things real quick. The Jones thing is becoming worse and worse and worse by the day because everybody else, and when I say everybody else, I mean anybody else who covers the NFL, period. Whether they're podcast people like ourselves, whether they're national media, whether they're the other teams. Jesus Christ, by the way, timeout. Micah Parsons, shut the hell up. Why is he running a podcast talking about other teams in the league while your team is 3-4 and you're injured? What happened
I missed
to the
that? I didn't see that. Was
he has his
bad-mouthing Jones again?
Well, he was, and
Okay.
but he's bad mouthing other teams too. And I'm like, why?
Yeah, he shouldn't be doing it. Can you imagine Parcells putting up with that? No.
Why are you interviewing people from other teams? You were in the middle of your season. You're supposed. I don't understand the world today is when it comes to the NFL about how guys now it's all about themselves. Anyway, back in. So everybody else is shitting on the Giants and the lightning rod. And this is a question I want to ask you too. The lightning rod is Daniel Jones. Have you ever, in any sport, by the way, in any sport, have you ever seen a guy who was just that much of a lightning rod for the organization where even fans of other teams are just constantly pointing that guy out? I can't remember because usually those guys aren't very good and they eventually go. That's an attitude usually that gets and that's where they're the lightning rod. I've never seen a lightning rod, who's basically his 2 biggest problems are he gets paid a ton of money and he sucks at his job.
Well, there have been lots of lightning rods in lots of sports. It depends on if you mean like stinky players, but like you're talking about even like Bill Romanowski and people would hate the guy because he was such a dick, So I know what you're getting at. What I don't understand is, how does a guy that's been so bad survive so long?
That's exactly. That's what I mean. Is like for this long for a guy. I mean, he hasn't won a Super Bowl. He hasn't even played in more than like 2 playoff games where he got destroyed in the other one. He's been bad or injured a ton. How is this guy still the quarterback and everybody in the league makes fun of him?
And we're in an era now where they bench high first round draft picks 2 years after they're drafted now, which I think is a extreme in the other direction too. So the Giants have decided to go in the opposite direction, just cling to this. So I don't know. My sense is we're all waiting for the other shoe to drop and for him to be benched. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. But that's what I feel like and that's why I feel like this is a wasted season, but within that wasted season, we're wasting time in the wasted season by just continuing to play him with the added risk, which is a gigantic risk, of you might get hit with another $23 million cap hit. I just do not understand them playing him at this point. I get he gives us the best chance to win thing. I don't believe that anymore anyways, but that's just subjective opinion. But to me, the risk so outweighs the upside at this point when you're 2-6. And plus if you believe in Shane that this was it with Daniel, and there are some people on the site, they could be right that Daniel is not going anywhere next year.
He's not coming back. There's no way.
Some people think that.
I know, and they're wrong. He's not coming back.
But if you assume that he's not going to be here next year, then I don't know why he's playing right now. Because you're not going to save the season. There was somebody, one of the questions we had was, let me see who it was from too, because I want to give them credit. One of the questions we had is from MS, who said, has Dabo lost the locker room, especially with his defensive players? I don't see any indications of that yet. Yet is the operative word. I don't think that, I mean, people say Tate Banks. I don't think that that's an indication he's lost the locker room. I think the fact that Dexter Lawrence is still coming out, Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns are sort of the guys in the defensive side of that ball. And they seem right now to have the back of the coaching staff still for now.
And let's keep in mind the Banks situation. I actually don't think he would have been pulled from the game when he did if Dexter Lawrence hadn't jumped all over him after that play.
Yeah, they said it was a sideline thing. They said it wasn't this week. They said it wasn't something that happened in the game.
I understand that, but Lawrence was arguing with people on the sideline. That has been reported. Yes. So there clearly Dexter Lawrence, and when you have players that have already come out and addressed that specific player, that to me says they're not upset with the coaches. They're upset with that guy who's on the field with them.
Right. That was my point. You said it better than I did. So my point is right now, no, I don't see any indications of that. But the problem is, and you've mentioned this in the other episodes, that could happen at any moment. If you keep going into games and scoring 7, 10, 13 points week after week after week, the defense is it's only human nature. It's not like we got a bunch of assholes on the team and they're looking out for themselves. It's going to be like, what are we doing? We don't even have a chance. And it's not just, you can go to any team, you can go to any franchise. It's always going to be like that. You could look at any team that has such a wide difference between the offense and the defense. If one side feels the other one's not pulling their weight, tensions are going to rise. I'm actually kind of amazed, to be honest with you, it hasn't reared its head already, because this has been going on since last year. This isn't a new thing. This happened last year when we were averaging 15 points a game.
Right.
Now maybe we're up to 15 now after we scored 18. I don't know what it is right now, but it was 14 last week. So we're so the Dexter Lawrences of the world, they're not seeing any improvement. Again, they upgraded the offensive line. People say, well, Andrew Thomas is out. Well, Andrew Thomas was only out in week 7. So that's only in the last 2 weeks. So the offensive line was playing much, much better. It was night and day better. Was it great? No, but it was functional. And there were games where we were going, oh my God, Daniel Jones had all the time in the world for most of the game. He didn't even get touched.
Correct me if I'm wrong. We've scored 117 points. Is that correct?
It was around it was just.
I think it's 117.
The only team that's worse than us, I looked it up this week,
is Miami.
Yeah.
So we're at 117.
So I
that's 14.65 points.
Oh, there you go. So it's between 14 and 15.
So we're less. We
are less. So but the line's better. You get Malik Nabers. Darius Slayton's steady. You might not love the guy, but he's steady. Sure. Wandale Robinson. We've seen good and bad from him. But he's
not being used correctly.
These are better than this is infinitely better surrounding talent than he had in 2022. The line is better. The receivers are better. The only thing that you could possibly say is Saquon was on that team. And now we're seeing Tyrone Tracy look like Ahmad Bradshaw. So,
right.
I don't think, given where they are in their careers, I don't know if I'd trade Ahmad Bradshaw for Saquon Barkley straight up, given the salary and given the productivity and given their age.
Tyrone Tracy.
I'm sorry, Tyrone Tracy. What did I say?
Ahmad Bradshaw.
It's
okay.
Bradshaw. Sorry. Yeah,
it's all good. I knew where you. Listen, if I could trade all of 2007 or 11, I would do it right now. You mentioned something about losing the locker room or not losing the locker room on the defensive side. I'm less worried about that than I am the one.
I'm
worried about Nabers.
Yeah,
Nabers has kind of said a couple things here and there. He's been a model citizen, but he said a couple of things. He even said it before the draft, by the way, when he mentioned the Giants are going to do something about getting a quarterback. That's weird that he mentioned that they would get a quarterback, but they didn't. They still have Daniel. And first off, Daniel pretty much got him beat to shit early on in the season. Some of those passes just left him to get creamed And he was taking it, and we were throwing it to him a ton. He mentioned coming against Washington. That's my dog over there. And I get it. You're former teammates and all that stuff, but my God, he must be like.
Well, you know what no one's talking about? He's a vertical threat. He's not just this guy that runs intermediate routes. His whole career at
right. LSU.
LSU in college was catching short passes and breaking tackles going to the distance, but also catching deep balls. So when we talk about, well, they're not throwing deep to Slayton, they're not throwing deep to Jalen Hyatt, they're not throwing deep to Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers can burn somebody running a go route down the field 80 yards, and he's not getting the ball when he's wide open down the field. So he's got to be frustrated. And I thought, I know I used it a couple times, but the quote where he was asked this week about what about Washington, and he starts talking about them having my dog at quarterback. All I could think was, this guy knows what the issue is. And I said it in the game preview.
Sure.
I don't think anyone in their right mind would take Washington's roster and trade him for our roster, except the quarterback position. So Washington doesn't have Dexter Lawrence. Washington doesn't have Brian Burns. Washington doesn't have Andrew Thomas. Washington doesn't. They have McLaurin, but Malik Nabers should be in that category. So if you look at the talent on the team, Washington wasn't even supposed to be in this position. Washington was supposed to be bringing up the rear in the NFC East. They torched their roster. They brought in all these old guys, and it was supposed to be like, we're going to cut all this cap space, which they did. They're going to purge, create, so that they have a lot of cap room next year, which they do. They have over $100 million. This was supposed to be a complete rebuilding year, and they're 6-2 in first place because their quarterback is who he is right now. And that's my biggest, previewing this game. My big preview for this game is this is going to be the most painful game. If it happens, what I think is going to happen. Now, Giants could upset them, but this is going to be the most painful game for Giants fans because we're going to be watching this game. I don't know how many people are going to be in the stands. Number one, I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, at 2-6, I don't know how many people are going to show up. And then,
well, there'll be a lot of Washington fans there.
Yeah, and then
there'll be a lot of Washington.
And then you're watching this game, and you're seeing Daniel Jones on our side, and you're seeing Jaden Daniels on the other side, and you're going, oh my God, now the Commanders have passed us, and now we're even worse than the Commanders, the one team that we could. The lone bright spot in the last few years is us being able to beat the Commanders. Now we don't even have that. So so I don't get any joy. The guy that's yelling at me about being negative, I don't get any joy saying that. I live in the DC area. I hate these guys. I don't. But the truth is the truth.
It's become. I'm gonna use the word only here, briefly. It's become like politics to talk about the Giants game in and game out. If you talk about the possibility of winning, one side jumps all over you because they're like, these are meaningless victories and blah, blah, blah. If you talk about them losing and talk about what's been going on and you point out the truth of some things, you're negative, you're toxic, you're this, you're that. There's no middle of the road, which is what we want to try to be somewhat, because the games have to still be played. Anything technically could happen, by the way. See, we do need to be careful about that because, again, the Giants started in 22. We started at 6-2. We finished at 9-7-1. The back half of the season was essentially 3-5-1. But if you actually take it one step further, because we went 6-2 on a loss, so that was a loss. We had actually started 6-1. If you take it from that point on, the team was 2-5-1 after we beat Washington or Houston. We were 2-5-1 from there. Mm-hmm. We were not good the whole second half. And the first half of 22, this is the weird part where you go, we could have done this, we could have done that. We could have lost. Tennessee misses a field goal at the end of the game after we go for two, we make the big play, we take the lead. Randy Bullock misses a field goal. Ironically, ends up kicking for us last year. We could have lost very easily to Chicago for the bulk of that game. That game was close. We ultimately won that game, and it was on Daniel Jones's legs until he got hurt, and then Tyrod Taylor and all that crap. So, and then you've got Green Bay, where I think Aaron Rodgers kind of shit the bed in the second half of that game. Like, they should have beaten us in London. This team literally could have been much worse in 22 than it ultimately was. But the back half of the season, I was saying this before, I feel like the Giants may be thinking we might flip the script. We're going to start kind of bad. We got a lot of young guys, but we just got to stay in it. That's why they keep saying Daniel Jones gives us the best chance to win. And I almost feel like they just mean they stay in the games. But the problem is when you do that, we've talked about this before, it is such a razor thin margin of error. And when you got a guy that just can't manufacture points, then really all you're counting on is that he won't make a mistake that will cost you something else somewhere else. And we're just not even doing that.
Yeah, and I don't discount any of that. I think, but the problem is what you just said. The quarterback doesn't score, and now Andrew Thomas is out. So,
here's the one thing to watch this weekend before we talk specifically the game, and we'll tie that up pretty quick. I was saying this before. You and I had this conversation offline. That I had an idea. I posted it a couple times. I had an idea of what I thought the Giants were going to do. Then we kind of went away from really talking about it too much because of a number of reasons. Watch this weekend. The Rams, once again, are dealing with a possible injury. They're downplaying it slightly, but Puka Nacua hurt the same knee that he hurt earlier this year. He may not play. If they lose to Seattle, they kind of start to fall behind where there really isn't. What are you gaining? Because they've got a lot of salary tied up in guys that probably aren't going to be there long term. The trade deadline is Tuesday. Cooper Kupp could go. Stafford could go. Keep an eye on that. There's also a couple other teams. If the Giants squeak a win out, and it's not because of the quarterback, so if Jones doesn't put up a bunch of numbers, but we just get by, I still have a weird feeling that the Giants might be buyers for a veteran. That they want to bring a guy in that they can already plan for, even if it doesn't really move the needle wins wise this year, it's to plan for next year and to then pull Jones. I don't know why Locke and DeVito are not options at the moment, other than maybe they're just worried about if those guys, let's say you put in DeVito and he actually does okay. He's got such a weird cult following that then it's, you deal with a lot of negativity if you just move on from him afterwards. Which I don't know why you would worry about that, but we know John Mara does. We know he pays attention to that crap, the wrong crap. I don't give a shit what the bulk of the fans think. If you know the guy's not winning, just move on. I don't care. But I just have a weird feeling that we're still, Tuesday's the deadline. Like the trade deadline is the 5th. So whatever's going to happen is going to happen after Sunday and early Tuesday. So on Monday's going to be a big day. You look for some of the other teams if they lose, and they might be trying to jettison players. And if the Giants squeak a victory out, then they become buyers for a veteran.
Right. And the one thing I want to just real quick, I saw people reacting to your comments about Richardson in our last show. And again, we're not advocating. I don't think either of us said Richard's the answer. What we were saying is they've got to get a quarterback from someplace, and one of the options may be trying to take one of these failed quarterbacks and fixing them. And I think that's is that ideal? No. Is that fraught with peril? Sure. But either you draft a guy or you hope somebody's going to be available in free agency, which that's probably not likely, but that'll solve it. Right. Or you try to rebuild somebody here. So
and I got attacked by a couple.
You did, and I don't think people realize how desperate this team is for a quarterback.
Well, and they also attacked me and equate because I've been very vocal about Tay Banks. So let me address that because I feel some people don't really understand what we're talking about here. Anthony Richardson ran 2 consecutive plays that were very physical. And on the second one, he took a fairly hard hit and went down. This is a guy coming off a hip and whatever. I make zero excuses for the dude. I've already said that he did something really stupid. And at that point, as the quarterback, he tapped his helmet and told the sidelines he needed to come out. This was after a second down play. So 2 consecutive plays, he's run, he's dog tired, he's been injured a little bit. He's a bigger dude, by the way, too. He handled it completely wrong. As a quarterback, you absolutely cannot do that. Worst case scenario, take a timeout. Just take a timeout and go, okay, I need a timeout. I got to catch my breath. I can't, I'm exhausted. The next play is 3rd down, timeout. No, he just taps his helmet and just walks off the field, and they have to throw Joe Flacco in. So my point was, you can't, as a quarterback and as an organization, when you pulled him, which you did after that, you now said he's not starting, and you not only said he's not starting, but you said Flacco's the starter for the rest of the year. You can't go back to that guy later because you've taken all his authority, all his power, all his leadership on the team, and you basically said you were not a leader. Tay Banks has been talked to multiple times by the Giants about his effort on the field. He didn't say he was tired. He just fricking didn't try. He didn't chase down CeeDee Lamb. He didn't try to tackle Jalen Hurts. He didn't try to tackle Saquon Barkley. Then whatever happened in Pittsburgh, that was just a culmination of the stuff that had already happened, and he's been talked to. Here's the other thing. We don't know what the hell he's been talked to about behind the scenes. My camera slowed way down there. We don't know what he talked about behind the scenes, in the locker room. What's been going on? I don't think it's been rosy with Tay Banks, or this wouldn't have been so easy to pull him the other night. I think this has been building. Anthony Richardson's situation, he was tired and came out at a wrong time, and that's a one-time mistake.
Yeah.
But for Indianapolis, when you bench him and put Flacco in and say, we're not going back to him the rest of the year,
No.
you've kind of cut ties. You've set sail on that ship.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that he's an opportunity to bring a guy in to try him for a little while. He's cheap. And he fits Daboll, a guy who can run, and he's less accurate than a lot of other quarterbacks, which Daboll worked with Josh Allen on his accuracy. He was not very accurate coming out. If he's the quarterback whisperer, give him 10 weeks to work with this guy. Let's just see what's happening.
Yeah, and I don't want to get in the weeds on this. Again, my point is not just focusing on the one guy. I'm just saying that we have to look at all options, and he's just one example of one of those options. So
right.
I'm not even going to argue it for or against him right now. I'm just
I actually want a veteran.
We have to get a quarterback to replace Daniel Jones, and the trade route is one of those routes. And in the trade route, you either get a guy that's, for whatever reason, hasn't done well in the situation he's in, and you hope to rebuild him. You buy low, in other words, and that stock that you're buying may still be awful, but that's the gamble. That's the position. That's the desperate position the Giants in. Or you get an older guy like the Stafford guy that you're talking about, and barring that, you have to go in the draft. Now, going back real quick, I just want to follow up on something you said way back in the beginning. We said very early on that the one vulnerability that Shane and Daboll have here with the court with the 2024 draft is if one of the other three quarterbacks that went after our pick ever end up being really good. So if a Nix or a Penix or a McCarthy ever end up being really good, that's going to look terrible for us. So that's a real risk there too. So I understand the Nabers pick. I was wary of the other three guys, and so I actually felt a little bit of a sense of relief. Part of me kind of wanted McCarthy, but part of me also wanted Nabers the sure. To me, Nabers was the sure thing. McCarthy was the guy that I was like, we got to get a quarterback, so it makes sense. But geez, he's raw, and this could go sideways on us. So I would have been fine with either pick. It's just if one of those guys after us starts playing really well, then it's gonna be again, because it gets back to what you were saying earlier. Can they evaluate the quarterback position? Those guys weren't even on the board when they did Hard Knocks, when they were shown the first 15 picks or whatever, when they sat down with Mara and Tish, and we speculated, was that reenacted or not? I don't know. So, but anyways, so the point I just wanted to defend John with this is, I don't think some people realize the desperate position that we're in with the quarterback, because assuming you believe Jones is gone, it's not just one of these things. Oh, we're going to get our next Jaden Daniels. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. Now, turning to I have to mention this too, because you mentioned Kate. You mentioned Randy Bullock earlier.
Oh,
what
dear
the
God.
hell is going on with us and kickers? So last year we went through. I had to pull this up. So we had Randy Bullock, Cade York, and Mason Crosby on the roster at different times because of kicker injuries. Now we've both got our punter, Graham Gano's on IR. Our punter's been out for a while, and now we get Greg Joseph now is out, and so now in honor,
And how
I'm
did he
wearing
get
a New York
hurt?
Irish in honor of Jude, who
How did he
now.
get hurt?
How are these guys getting hurt in practice kicking the ball? Have you ever seen anything like this?
I,
This isn't like guys running into a kicker during the game. Something's happening in practice. What are we
I mean, I
doing?
can see if you like pulled your hamstring, but this sounds like it was like some sort of oblique injury. I'm like, what are you doing in practice? Come on, man.
When I watched football for decades, have you ever recalled the Giants? I mean, until the last 2 years, have you ever recalled? I mean, there was the one year we had the school teacher kicking.
Eric Schubert.
Schubert, thanks. We had Schubert
Ah,
kicking.
yes.
Yes, there you go. So, but that's the only time I can think of, like, what is it with us in kicker? I don't know.
We should just pick up the phone. We should call Bjorn Nitmo. He's got to be out there somewhere.
So this is. I mean, we got rid of kickers in the past because I think, if I recall correctly, they just were. It wasn't so much they were getting hurt. I'm trying to remember. When we got Schubert, was it because of performance or did somebody get hurt? I don't remember.
We had an injury. Didn't we get Bob Thomas? And Bob Thomas got hurt. And then we started to go through, and they tried a couple of guys. I mean, Parcells was not a guy to stick with a kicker for very long if you screwed up. Yeah. In fact, we went from Raul Allegre to Matt Barr, I believe. Wasn't Allegre kind of injured a couple of times, and they were
maybe.
I mean, actually, it might have been
punters were around for like ever, so we had a real great span with punters,
right? Jennings and then Landetta, and we were like set forever.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I was just curious. I was going to ask you. I'm glad you brought this up. Could this be, if you were a conspiracy theorist, could this be the most quiet tanking job you ever saw a team do? We're going to keep putting Daniel Jones out. That seems obvious, but we say he's better than everybody else. But maybe we know we're just not going to win with him. But then we're like, he's really good with Washington. We need to yank our we need to yank our kicker because we do kick a lot of field goals. So.
I will say that the thought has popped into my head, but it's too crazy. It's just too crazy. It's
when that came up so late in the week, I'm like, oh my God, is this intentional? Like are we
it's the same team, and it's the same. It's against the same team.
If we go for like 2-point conversions every down, every time we score, if we score, if we eschew field goals and we're going for like 4th and 3, 4th and 4, because even though we were in field goal range, I'm going to be like, you did this on purpose, man. You did this on purpose. But I don't know. I mean, injuries at a position is one thing when it's like, oh man, we seem to have a lot of tackle injuries. Oh, we have a lot of cornerback injuries. I've never seen a team go, man, we got a lot of kicker injuries.
Yeah, somebody made a funny post on the site. I wish I could remember who it was yesterday, saying, "Are we using our kickers at linebacker during practice?" So I thought that was hilarious. I don't know. It's just, and the thing is this guy did not kick field goal. He wasn't the field goal kicker at Rutgers his final year there. So he was the kickoff specialist. So this is going to be, like you said, we may end up going for on. He's got a really strong leg. That's why he's on the team. Is they saw enough. He doesn't cost anything because he's an international player. There's a free roster spot, so it's a good gamble to say maybe this guy turns into something that we can replace Graham with at some point. There's no downside to this. He doesn't cost anything against the salary cap. And he doesn't. Matter of fact, if you go into the NFLPA website and look at the salary breakdowns, he's listed as 0. I mean, he's getting paid, but he doesn't count, and he doesn't count against the practice squad count. So, but you're right. Friday it drops. Oh, by the way, our kicker's out. So it's funny. The list was the injury list is so long. It's 16 players this week. When I was going through it, I was like, wait a minute. There's another kicker. I had back in my head the punter's out, and then I'm like, wait a minute, why is Joseph on the list? And he's out. What just happened?
How ironic would it be that we would have a guy who's a kickoff specialist that is going to be playing in a game that our offense might be bad enough that he may only kick off one time?
Yeah, I make it happen. And can you imagine the cheer from the mocking cheer from the Giants fans in the stadium when the Giants Daniel, if and when Daniel throws a touchdown pass at MetLife? It'll be his first of the year. Here it is, November 3rd. When we play, it's gonna be November 3rd, and he's gonna throw his first touchdown pass at home. If he does it, it'll be like, yay!
Since 2022, the 2022 season. I mean, oh my God. So let's wrap it up. Let's kind of cover this real quick. All right. What do you foresee happening here? Let's stick with the offense first, because we know the history with Jones in Washington. Although to be truthful, the last few games haven't been overly great. He did in Washington wasn't bad. But we still couldn't really get enough point, and we didn't have the ball that much, but we couldn't get the 2-point conversions when we needed them. We didn't convert. Neighbors did drop the ball. But even before that, though, we played some tough games with Jones at quarterback with Washington. We had the tie game at home in 22. We won the game, the second game, which was basically 2 weeks later, in Washington. But while the offense played okay, that was the Kayvon Thibodeau game, the sack, fumble, that kind of stuff. So what are you seeing offensively here from the Giants? What are you expecting?
Yeah, I just want to say also, we got a shitload of questions. I just refreshed it, so we'll have to move on this. I gotta get to the
do that, and then we'll blast through them.
Yeah, so you want to know what
do you think offensively?
Offense, not defense. Offense, I don't think until Daniel proves otherwise, are we going to throw a touchdown pass? Why would we expect? He seems to be regressing to me. So he's not making. Well, I won't say this because he made 2 mistakes at the end of the game. People will say, "Well, the sack fumble's on him, but he didn't slide the protection over." So the mistakes are starting to creep in. So I hope Tyrone Tracy doesn't ding his, the concussion. I thought you took unnecessary grief, by the way, with that this week too, about being a little bit more careful with him. I get it. When you pass the protocol, it's the protocol, but concussions are concussions, and we've seen players that come back a little bit too early on that. So I hope we can run the ball. We ran the ball really well against Washington in the first game. They ran the ball incredibly well on us in the first game as well too. There's 2 things I'm looking for in this game on offense is, does Chris Hubbard improve at left tackle? The coaching staff seems to think he can, that he played better in the second half than he did in the first half last week. But can he somehow, and he was an asset in the run blocking. So that's why I would run more. And then the other thing is Daniel Jones. Can Daniel Jones actually score points? I mean, I think everything, I hate to sound like a broken record. Everything comes back to Daniel Jones. He's the only thing holding the offense back right now.
Agreed.
So that's and then, because I want to get on the question, on the defensive side of the ball, they went from being really good. They had a bad game against the Commanders in week 2 defending the running backs. And they were fine except for the quarterback runs until the last 2 weeks when they've fallen apart. Barkley and the Eagles' backup running back ran for 200 yards, and the Pittsburgh ran for 160 yards. So all of a sudden our run defense is falling apart. And it hadn't up until this point, but now it is. So Washington, Brian Robinson's questionable for the game, and he ran for 133 yards against us in the first game, and that was his season high. And then, of course, you got the Jaden Daniels doing thing. The thing I want to just throw this out with Washington too is this town is on fire with Jaden Daniels, and the Commanders believe in Jaden Daniels. That carries so much weight in an NFL game that they have. When you believe you can do it, you can do it, and they believe with him that they can come back and they can win. And they did it on a Hail Mary. That was one of the more amazing Hail Marys I've ever seen. The dumbass Bear defensive back in the end zone taunting the fans while
Tyreek Stevenson. Oh my God.
Jesus Christ. So he killed us in the first game with dink, dink, dink. He never connected down the field. So on the defensive side, I'm going to be very curious. How does Shane Bowen adjust to what happened in the first game?
Right. I think real quick for me, offensively, I worry that this is still a good matchup. This is going to sound bad. I worry that this is somewhat of a good matchup for Jones still, because they don't really present a big fortified pass rush. They're a weaker defense that way. They stripped a lot of their players out. They've, like you said, they've dropped a lot of salary. They don't present the same kind of forceful front that both Philadelphia and Pittsburgh have the last couple of weeks. So I think our offensive line should settle down some. That gives Jones the ability to do some of the things he does. The problem that I have, though, why I worry about that is I don't want that to be this excuse that, well, we make yards, because he still doesn't score. And if we're kicking field goals against Washington, then not only does that should be the final nail, because quite frankly, this is the one team that he does things well against. If you look statistically, his numbers are just that much higher, period, across the board, always against Washington. If you don't do that this game, though, if he struggles right in the beginning, the boo birds come out, things are going to fall apart fast. I think they got to go run. One thing I would say to watch for, Daboll mentioned that they were practicing, and Neil's been practicing in jumbo and all this other stuff, which is BS. Well, it's BS in the games. He's never played jumbo once. I brought it up so many times. He's never done it once. The one effing time you decide you have him standing out in the wide, and anyway, that being said, I actually expect that he will come on the field for this. I do think we're going to see him in jumbo packages. You didn't mention him for like that and not do it. So I think we'll see him in jumbo packages. I think we're going to run more than we have been. I just think Daniel Jones right now, he's such a head case that I think one or two bad plays is going to just sink it. I'm kind of hoping.
The crowd's not going to give him any grace.
He's not. No, there's going to be. I think they'll boo him the second he comes on the field.
If they go 3-and-out on the opening drive, all bets are off on this. I mean, and
then defensively, I think it'll be interesting to watch Banks with McLaurin if he travels.
I wish they mentioned that Banks. Yeah,
because he's got to pick up his play. He should be embarrassed. I'm not really getting that from him. Not that we've heard a lot, but even last time, because usually when you've been called out, you generally don't have the same problem within just a couple of weeks. That's usually a bad sign when it recurs so quickly. So it'll be interesting to see him. Our linebackers have been very poor tacklers, and lately a lot. Okereke has been up and down, plays decently, but he disappears a lot. McFadden hasn't done. Musal has been on the field a little bit. Let's see him play a little, but we're going to need Ojulari and we're going to need Burns to get a pass rush, but they got to contain. You can't just, Daniels ate us up in the running. He would run and pick up 7 or 8 yards, first down. His throws were within 10 yards. That's not the case anymore, though. He's throwing it down the field.
He's throwing down the field.
We need to watch that. So
last thing on this, we'll go to the questions. It was interesting that I haven't watched them all yet, but the ones that I've seen on the position coaches, Andre Patterson, the defensive line coach, when talking about the run defense, said something that I've said in the past. It's not just the front 7, it's the defensive backs. He seemed to be throwing some of the defensive backs under the bus a little bit in terms of run defense.
Tackling.
So that's something to keep an eye on. So let's get to these, because there's a lot of questions here. So San Fran's question, it was is watching the Giants offense unconstitutional by the 8th Amendment, barring cruel and unusual punishment? Yes. All right. Should we inquire, and would the Vikings trade us? Here we go. JJM McCarthy for our next year's first. The assumption being SD does enough this season to earn a long-term 3 to 4 year deal. That's an interesting question.
Are you talking about in the off season? You're not talking at the trade deadline.
I would think that they invested in that quarterback, that they would keep him. I don't think they would be interested in trading.
And it would be very difficult to trade him once the league season opens, which is in March, because I don't know that he would still be able to pass a physical per se with that knee. And I doubt you're willing to take on already 1 year of a contract up with a guy coming off an ACL. I don't see that happening. You're better off drafting a guy.
The thought has entered my mind, but I would think that unless they see something in him that they have sort of a tiny bit of buyer's remorse in terms of how he handles himself or anything like that. And again, the Giants' first round pick is going to be very, very high. So I wouldn't completely discount it, but the injury isn't not like a devastating, as far as I understand, it's not a devastating injury. So I wouldn't completely discount it, but I would think the Vikings
I think there's
it's interesting. It's an interesting thought. That's all.
I'll say this: there's a bigger chance that we sign Sam Darnold than there is that we trade for JJ McCarthy.
Yeah. Simple question, but hit from many different angles. This is Robbie Balls, 2003. What do you think? Oh, I'm sorry. The last question too was EJ and NJ. So Robbie Balls wants to know, what do you think the goal is for the team the rest of the year, from a fan perspective, coaching perspective, management perspective, owner perspective? Oh boy, I'm just going to say that's where I'm confused. I don't know what they're doing right now from a fan perspective. My fan interest is, I said it all the time, my fan interest is really, really low right now because I feel like we're coming out with a quarterback that isn't going to be here next year. And the only thing I'm worried about right now is he going to get another neck injury or tear his knee? I mean, I'm worried about that. The coaching perspective I think they're coaching for their jobs, and the management perspective, I don't know what they're doing. The owner perspective, I don't know what we've already gone on about John Mara. I don't, that's all subjective. I don't. Do you have any thoughts on any of that? I mean,
yeah, I keep thinking because the league is watered down, so you have to separate. You have to separate your fandom, and you have to separate what you think is best for the team for the moment on the management and the coaching side of things. I think they know they don't have a quarterback. I think we've seen now that they don't believe the other two guys can actually make it better. That they think.
Why are they both on the roster?
No, I got you. I agree. But I think we're at the point where we're at. Two things I think, again, that I think they want to have happen, or they keep hoping is going to happen. So I know I'm going to play the woulda, coulda, shoulda just real quick. Probably should have beaten Washington, and they're going to hold that the kicker issue kept them from winning that game, and that's a fairly accurate statement. Dallas has one more win than us, and that one win is over us. And we probably should have won that game. We were better than Dallas was that night, but we didn't. So you see what's holding them back. I feel like they're hoping to just manufacture enough wins to allow the younger guys to build and develop, and that'll lead them. I don't think they're sold on. I think we're getting somebody. I don't know it'll be at the trade deadline, but I think it's going to be a veteran. I think in their head, we're trying to build everything else. We know we've got a decent team with some players. We got to fill some other areas, and our quarterback's the one thing. I still think this weekend is pivotal, and I think it's pivotal in their minds too. If we win this game, but don't look that great offensively, but we win the game, and if some other teams in the league lose, I think we become buyers. There are 3 teams to keep an eye on. The Rams, the Panthers, who we play the next week, and that's where it becomes weird. Bryce Young is not out of the realm of possibility, as much as I'm not a fan of him. There are teams asking about him, and guess what? Bryce Young threw 2 touchdown passes the week before. Our quarterback did not.
And there's the Alabama connection.
And there is that connection and stuff, and you just wondered, like, do they just think that if we even got just a halfway decent guy that we can mold, we can win? DeVito's not the guy. Locke's not the guy. We're past that. I think management's trying to win. You can't give up because there's so many bad teams. Fans, if we lose this weekend, and I want them to just keep losing. At that point, I want them to just keep losing. Even to Carolina, I want them to lose, because then that means we will definitely clean house of a lot of stuff. But management and stuff, they're trying to build, and they got to win. And like you said, their wins are coming down. They've got to add some wins somewhere. If they keep losing, it doesn't matter what you and I think.
Right.
There's no way that John Mara is going to bring them back at the end of the year if we go 2-15.
But my problem is, again, and then we should move on, is again from a coaching perspective and I understand the Daniel gives us the best chance to win argument, but I don't believe that anymore, because you have a quarterback who can't throw touchdown passes, and if he doesn't throw touchdown passes, how many games are you going to win? And we're getting into the situation where you just said, we almost won the Washington game. We almost won the Dallas game. But this is what you said earlier. Every game we're in now, it's like you got to be almost perfect because the quarterback isn't playing well. So if something happens, like the kicker happens, or if something happens because there's this bad call or there's this crazy play, well, that's why we lost, because right. It's like you're blaming. We're falling into this thing like, what if we almost just could have, if only this had gone right, we would have won. And that's a dangerous game.
It's almost like they're saying it the wrong way. It's not that he gives us. Yeah. It's not that he gives us the best chance to win. He's the guy that they hope would create the least amount of negatives to create the
Yes.
loss.
Yes, and then I'm saying maybe the upside on the other guys, you would trade off the fewer, I mean, the more mistakes you have, but you get more big plays. So
Right.
there's a trade-off. But we just are coming off a game where Daniel made 2 killer mistakes in the last 5 minutes of the ball game. So I don't know. Robbie,
Yep.
I wish I could answer a lot of these from a fan perspective. Again, I would be more interested this weekend if we knew a new quarterback was playing. Wouldn't you? I mean, at least you have
Oh, without a doubt.
watch.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
And Gary wants to know if we could be an animal, which one would it be? All right, I grew up being a dog person because we always had dogs in our family, but my wife's a cat person, and I've learned that if you were going to come back and be an animal, it would be a cat because all they do all day is sleep and eat, and other bodily functions. But cat would be like, you know, they're pampered. So
Wow. What animal would you? Huh?
You could be a tree. What kind of tree would you be?
Holy shit!
Don't
Trees
spend
and
too
animals.
much time. Just throw something
Yeah.
out there.
I think based on how we treat our dogs, I think I'd want to come back as a dog. Our dogs are treated pretty well.
Big blue shock. Neighbors, are you hearing any through the grapevine from your sources about Neighbors? Maybe I'm off base, but he just doesn't seem to be playing with the same intensity as before the concussion. My guess simply frustration from the losing quarterback play. This is a really good question, but it's possible that he's dealing with lingering effects from the concussion, something else. Again, could be way up. No, I think you're on to something, big blue shock. Something's a little bit off. I don't know what it is. I will tell you, I've heard some things through the grapevine, which I can't get into, about the quarterback position, but I can say I have heard nothing about Neighbors. My inkling, I worry about the concussion, but I wonder if it's the quarterback. So you're one of those guys that when you post, you and I are usually on the same wavelength. I actually enjoy your posts quite a bit, and I share your concerns. I don't have any insights on that. I worry about the concussion being an issue there. I shouldn't say I know. I feel very, very strongly based on what he says to the media that he's got serious quarterback envy right now.
Oh, sure.
It's obvious beyond belief. And if anything, if you should applaud him a little bit for his restraint at this point because he's running all over the place wide open and they're not getting him the damn ball. Now,
and I think there's 3 factors.
He's dropped, and I know John's talked about
yeah,
but if the ball hits you in the hands and you're an elite receiver, you got to catch
you got to catch it.
So,
I think there's 3 factors though. The 2 that you already talked about, the concussion and the, just kind of the frustration, I think, is built up. But also keep in mind, his usage was unbelievably high in the first few weeks leading up to the concussion. I mean, he was being targeted
15 times a game
at a record pace.
Yeah.
That takes a lot out of you on top of the concussion. Like, I think he was starting to get a little worn down because these aren't like he's getting targeted and they were, like you said, 60, 70-yard passes and he's just going to the house. You know what I mean? Like even 30-yard pass and taking it to the house. These were 15, 20 yards and he was getting popped. These were 7, 8 yards and he's getting hit because he's in traffic and he's having to make the catch or having to go up high, like in the preseason game against Houston, where he had to jump way up high and took that big hit on the sidelines. These are things that are not easy for him. They had been easy. Now it's having to work very hard at stuff. And I think those 2 things, the usage and the concussion just kind of came all together. You come back and things haven't changed. You're back on the field and you're like, what the hell?
And on the other thing too, remember, he's really, really tight with Jaden Daniels. And he looks in the same division. He sees Jaden Daniels is having a blast. He's the hero of the town. Everything's turned around. And here he's stuck with numbnuts, and they're 6-2. We're 2-6, completely opposite direction. They have everything to play for, and that's why Washington's. People are saying, well, they're going to have a letdown game this week. And this is a really important game for Washington because they're 6-2. This is one of those ones they circle on their calendar. We're the get well team, and we're the team that people circle on the calendar saying that's a win. So when we all Giants fans, we go through the schedule, we're like, win, loss, win, loss, loss. Nobody ever circles the Giants and goes loss. No, no one ever does. And they got to win this game to stay in first place.
And they can point back and go, you know, we screwed up over and over and over again in that game. We kicked 7 field goals.
Yeah, they were in red zone 7
We
times.
should have won
Blasted
that.
them. They
We should have
crushed
just
us.
blown them off the field,
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
didn't. And so there's stuff from there. And I don't think Dan Quinn's going to let his team have a letdown.
Well, you never know. You just never. It can happen, but they've got a lot to play for. This is an important game. And the other, but we got the other really interesting game this weekend. And my neighbor, the Cowboy fan, reminded me of this, and he's really down because, you know, it's like you've said before, the division's there for the taking, but we're all. This is a really interesting game with the Eagles and Cowboys this week. Which team shits the bed there more? So that's going to be kind of the bat. I think the team that wins that game is going to have some momentum behind their back, but they're going to be chasing the Commanders if the Commanders beat us. So,
well, just
yeah.
so we're clear, you're talking about the Eagles and Cowboys separate games.
Wait, aren't they?
Dallas plays Atlanta, and
Philadelphia. He told me they were playing the Eagles.
No. Dallas plays Atlanta, and Philadelphia plays Jacksonville on Sunday night.
Oh, well, he told me we was drinking scotch at the time, so maybe
I'll be watching.
He told me the Eagles and Cowboys were playing this weekend.
Oh. No. I'll be watching the Giants.
When they play, but
the
they
Giants
haven't played yet, though, have they? The Cowboys?
No, they have not played yet.
Okay.
I'll be watching the Giants Commanders with my neighbor, who's a Commanders fan. The first time they moved in, my neighbor before we became good friends was a Bears fan. And so we could commiserate because our team suck. And when the draft came around, we would have fun with that. I met the guy who bought the house, and when he bought it a few years ago, I met him and whatever, we talked. And so we both knew we were football fans. So one day I'm sitting out on my back patio, and all of a sudden I'm hearing this sound. And I'm like, what the hell is that sound? And then I could tell I'm like, it's music. I'm like, where's this music coming from? He had put a speaker up on his fence and was playing "Hail to the Redskins."
Oh God!
To me.
Oh God!
So we become really good friends. So he's going to come over. I've been enjoying every time we get together to watch the game until this year.
We used to work in an office. I had a secretary who was diehard Redskins fan, and every day I'd come to work and she'd go, "Hail to the Deadskins." She used to call them the Deadskins. Sorry. So Lugnut questions. I am football business and contract ignorant, but can we move shop Neil? All the talk is shopping Slayton Ojulari. He is just a lost blanking cause here, but somebody with a lot of draft picks could spare one. Might take him as a reclamation project. Is there any doubt that Greenfield starts Sunday? Just signed, undrafted, no experience. It would be so Giants to have blanked up an OL position and have to start him.
You'd be selling low. You'd be selling so low that it's not worth it.
Question here too. Yeah. My thing with Neil is this, and everyone's going to take my responses to him as being just defending him at all costs. I'm not doing that. It's what you said. There's talent there. I want to see our offensive line coach have him for a full year and see if he can fix it before again, because like you just said, that we'd be selling so low. If somebody, I mean, what would they get for him at this point? So
I mean, you'd get a 6th or a 7th at that. I mean, no one's giving more than that.
I mean, and the other thing is, and even though I've poo-pooed this, but I've poo-pooed this because it's too late in the game because he was hurt all summer and they couldn't switch him to guard. There was no time. He wasn't doing it. I would still, before I even did that, go the William Roberts route and try him at guard because
I agree with you, but
his weaknesses so to date could be hidden much more effectively at guard.
Yep.
So if we get into January and Carmen's like, I don't think we can make a tackle out of him. I'd rather have him in training camp from OTAs from day one playing right guard in next summer. Because I think he can blast people in the running game.
I agree with you with everything you just said, except for one minor thing. The Jets blew that out of the water Thursday night when they played 2 tackles at guards who hadn't even been playing there all year. One guy had never played guard ever, and they had to throw him in. He basically was talking to the center to make sure that they knew what the snap count was because they were injured and they had to do it. If you can do that with a guy just in the middle of a week on a short week from a Sunday to a Thursday, and then there's no reason you can't start practicing the dude at guard. That's bullshit.
But the thing right now is so the Giants are actually pretty decent shape at guard. In this sense. So like Stinney may actually even be better than Van Roten. So even so, if you really don't like, if you don't like Van Roten playing, and Van Roten is actually one of the guys that stood up in the locker rooms. So, and I don't think he's been as bad as people have. I think people like to focus on find a guy to harp on. And I think Van Roten's been all right. If you really didn't, if they were going to move on from him right now, it would be Stinney that would come in here. So
Sure.
I always said Neal is stuck at right tackle this year unless there is a break glass moment, and the Jets got to that moment. The Jets had to do what they did because they didn't have anybody else. So no, they can do that. I mean, anyone in these offensive linemen other than center, you can put anyone there, but they're not going to want to do that when they have Stinney there.
No, I get it. I guess my point though is I'm getting a little tired of he's a right tackle only, and you don't even play him at right tackle. I'm getting tired of this thought of, well, that's such a
no,
thing.
I don't know.
And it's not on you. I'm talking about the coaching staff.
Yeah, but I don't think they're saying he's just the right tackle. They're saying what I've been arguing. He's only been practicing at right tackle since we drafted him. Now, your argument is, well, stop doing that. Now, I will say this was the first week.
Well, they didn't move Illuminor to left tackle. That would have made the most sense if we wanted to keep the offensive line the best players on the field. Illuminor goes to left, and Neal would come in at right tackle.
Illuminor can handle left tackle. We don't know that.
Well, he can't be any worse than Azudu and
Hubbard. What was I going to say?
Sorry,
we'll move on to the
my
next
bad.
question because he has another question here too. So, if Jones, same question from Lugnut. I'm sorry, different question from Lugnut. If Jones QB play, is Jones's QB play unprecedented? It's now 20. Yeah. It's now 22 months. Yeah, I think we've already addressed this. He goes on to say the same points that we have. He has all these weapons, and he's tired of the dump offs and that produce nothing. We've already logged up. If you've seen any of our podcasts and you've gone this far, you know we've answered this question. Yeah, it's unprecedented. It's terrible. And that's why I don't understand why people are defending him at this point, because
I don't think
anybody's November and he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass at home.
I don't think anybody's been as average at quarterback and still been the starter for as long as he has, probably till pre-free agency. So when there wasn't free agency, where guys you were kind of stuck for a long time. Sometimes it took a while to get off who you had. You could have an average quarterback be out there for a long time. Since that time, teams don't generally, with the contracts and with the ability to go get somebody, they don't let a guy just be average. And I mean, we're talking average to below average, by the way, for so long. I mean, it's bordering on, I don't want lunacy at this point. It is epically bad, and there's no excuses that could be made anymore.
I feel like we're making excuses now to keep him in there. Some fans are. So the name of the game is scoring. You have to score to win football games. He doesn't score, but people are looking at other things now to justify the lack of scoring. Well, he did this or this happened.
They dropped the ball
a different way.
Sure.
And it's just, again, it's not in a vacuum. It's been going on for years, and it's been going on every game this season except the Seattle game. All right, let's see. 56 go. How bad do things have to get before the Giants leadership above GM make changes to the way they do business? That's $1 million question.
It depends on what you mean by do business, though. This is the part that I want to ask you real quick, since that question came up.
We should have started with these questions earlier because these are really good questions.
It's been mentioned a few times by a couple of different people that the Giants embarrassed themselves in Hard Knocks. Shane and Dayball specifically. Do you feel that way?
I don't feel that way.
I don't either. I see some of the things that maybe they're hinting at, but I also look at this. It's a goddamn fucking reality show. I mean, you're seeing moments. We don't know what for us, right? When I finish this and I put it up, there isn't one piece of this that I edit out. All I do is make transitions sometimes, but I've never once taken pieces out of here. Oh, that didn't fit, or oh, no. It stays. What we saw in Hard Knocks is stuff that's been cut up. It's not even linear. You don't know that when one conversation is happening over here, when did that happen in sort of the progression of the other stuff? We don't know. It's just when they put it in to the actual episode.
And the only thing that's missing from Hard Knocks, which is a huge thing that's missing, and the thing that you could knock them, but I have a feeling they cut it out or wouldn't have this conversation on the cameras, is this. My one big thing was the glaring omission is there was never a shot seen with the hierarchy of this team sitting down and saying, what are our problems on the, there's a reason why you can't do this. I mean, because you're talking about the player, you don't want to throw the players under the bus and all that, but what are we going to do at quarterback? What do we think of our quarterback? What do we think about our roster? That kind of thing. We got little snippets of the roster stuff and it's implied with the offensive line moves. We saw the discussion on Saquon over and over again about we're not going to pay him and all that, but we never saw the intimate behind the scenes discussion about Daniel Jones. And that was edited out, or that wasn't put in there, or whatever. And so if that conversation didn't happen, then the organization's screwed. But I got to assume that conversation happened, but they just didn't, it wasn't included.
Yeah, I mean,
did you get that? I mean, there's no conversation about Daniel Jones in that thing other than that one thing that we're not going to have our quarterback hand off to Saquon Barkley. That was our $40 million quarterback. There was
and they also said we have to see what we've got with him,
yes,
with players. And then the comment, you could put Patrick Mahomes behind our offensive line last year and he's not going to be successful and whatever.
And the injury thing. They discussed the injury thing.
And there was one thing with the quarterbacks that I think some people point to in the wrong way, and it was the Jaden Daniels part. Would you trade up for him? And Dayball goes, Daniels? Absolutely. And then they show the Giants talking to the Patriots about trade, or at least, there was the hint that we went and talked to them. Then we're supposedly on the phone with them, but we're not hearing the other end, only our end. At no point in time, none, did they mention Drake May. It was Daniels. They specifically talked about Williams. Yes, they mentioned May was up with those three, and we met with the three quarterbacks. But when they talked about possibly trading up, it was for Daniels, a guy we knew Washington was going to take. So that wasn't even on the table.
But Mike Garafolo reported that the Giants you tried to trade up. Mike Garafolo was reporting it, and the Boston reporters reported it too.
But you knew it wasn't ever going to happen, right? So What I'm saying is, though, they've never. My point is, there is a reason why they never said his name specifically, because we were legitimately trying to get him. Yeah. They throw Daniel's name out because it was never going to happen.
I agree. I see where you're going with this. Yes, I agree 100%. Yes.
And it was so
it was selectively edited that way. Yes.
Yeah, and there's just I never thought there was any buffoonery. Now, the first thing I'll say is if I'm watching Hard Knocks and I'm in the league, I'm on the phone. If I'm of course, Carolina's a disaster anyway. I'm on the phone and I'm calling if I'm Tepper, I'm calling my GM going, do not just throw somebody's name out there to another GM who's being filmed and recorded, by the way. You lost all leverage with Brian Burns if you couldn't work that deal out with the Giants. You put his name out there. Would you guys take Burns? I'm like, who says that in an open area just like that? You basically, and then why do you want to get rid of a guy who's that good, by the way? But that was a connection there that makes me feel like, God damn it. That's the only part I didn't like, the Shane Morgan connection. Did we overpay for Burns? Because anyway, I didn't think.
Yeah, but just to round us out with 56 go. I think things change on this team once you change the quarterback. So in a way, when you say before leadership above the GM makes changes, I think we're in a different place if the quarterback's different. So in a way, your thing's tied to, can we get somebody in here, or do we have somebody here already who can finally fix the quarterback position? I don't know the answer to that question. So my feeling right now is that the roster's actually been getting better, but the quarterback position is there. But I'm so frustrated with their handling of the quarterback position that it's ruining everything else. So I think if you just fix that, and it's that big if you fix that thing, things look a lot better. But how do you fix that one thing?
So I know, but you threw it out there.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that you heard some things, but you can't say it. And I'm not going to put you on the spot for that. But I think you can say legitimately that they do know that they have a problem, though. Is that fair to say?
I will say from what I've heard, they know they've got a quarterback problem.
Right.
And
So
yes.
yeah, and I think we're all on the same page.
I will go with that.
Yeah, agreed. Yep, agreed. And that's
where
I'm
I don't
thinking.
think that's someone's going to say out there. You don't bullshit. You don't know anybody. You don't even have to believe me. You can connect the dots anyway.
And I've said that all along too. I said there's some signs that said to me that that's why I kept saying I've got an idea that I think I know what they're doing. I think they want to get a veteran from somewhere else, because I think if you look at it, you could go across the league. I think we could take 17, 18. I think you could go maybe 20 to 24 quarterbacks across the NFL right now. We could just move them into place of Jones at the beginning of the season, and we're at least 4-4. We're at least 4-4 with somebody else. And that's really, you might be able to go further. Jameis Winston, we're 4-4 if we have Jameis Winston at quarterback. And I don't even like Jameis Winston.
No, I don't either. So yeah, it's just so bad. It's a quarterback. Anyway, we're going on 90 minutes again.
I'm watching it. I know. So there goes the whole idea. It was going to be even shorter.
So let's go real quick. Wait a minute. Do you think reporters magnify any possible negative stories when the team is doing poorly? Oh, sure. Or is that natural product or dearth of good things to report? I will say Blue Worm. The only thing I've noticed is that the reporters seem bored covering this team. It was funny how quickly they moved on after another Giants loss and started following the Yankees game. They seem bored to me. I mean, that's just again a subjective opinion again, but I think in a normal situation they would be feeding negative stories constantly. I think the New York media, who's supposed to be so tough and all this, has kind of mailed it in this year.
I think the worst thing that happened for John Mara, and might be the best thing that happens for fans if you want change, is that the Jets pulled out a win on Thursday night. If the Jets continue to go down, that's a bigger story because of Aaron Rodgers and everything else associated with it. The fact that they won, and there is a path for them to pick up a number of other wins throughout the season if they play well enough. That the Giants looking bad, this is going to get worse. If they lose again, the media pieces are going to. Do I think they stir things up on purpose? I don't think they do it on purpose. I just think that some of them are prone to. How do you get people to listen or watch? It's either really great or it's really bad. The middle doesn't get a lot of stuff.
It's boring. The Giants are boring.
They are boring. That's the one thing we've talked about. It
boring. And the reporters know they're boring. And so what are the reporters talking all about? Oh, the kicker. Yeah. Come on. They're boring. We don't score. We have an exciting player and he doesn't score. I mean, Malik Nabers, we're talking Malik Nabers earlier. He can't get in the end zone because the quarterback can't get him the goddamn ball.
Right.
But again, Malik start catching the passes too. All right. So all right, Dank Beer Man. Let's see. Wait, did I skip one? Wait. Michael. He's responding to somebody else. All right. Dank Beer Man. Obviously, they already move off quarterback. I agree. But when do you think the transition to developing guys versus playing guys that will give us the best? All right. I already talked about this. I bench Jones already. I don't see the upside. I only see risk. And the only guy who's going to be on the court on the team, the only guy we know for sure that's going to be on the roster come March is DeVito. So Locke's going to be is going to be a free agent. I doubt he's back. Hopefully Daniel's contract is terminated in January or March, or I'm sorry, February. And so when you transition to developing guys and playing guys that give us the best chance to win, I've argued that I'm starting to think that one of the other quarterbacks gives us the best chance to win, and you can develop them. So I don't see any. That's why I don't understand why they're playing Daniel Jones right now. I don't see.
The most obvious answer to the direct question is if we lose Sunday, and then we go and we stink up the joint and lose to Carolina, which is possible. They're not a horrible team, by the way. Their defense is not that bad, and with Andy Dalton, assuming he's back that next week, they could beat us. If we lose those two games, then at that point, I think everything gets shut down. I think you've pointed this out for a while. The bye week would be the week that you kind of, in many ways, install or uninstall what it is you have. I still think you're going to want to watch what happens over the next 48 hours, though, as far as possibly somebody else coming on board.
Yeah, and then just to wrap this up there, I think there are two more legitimate questions about something. If we were crowned Miss America, would we promote world peace? Sure. Here's a question. In
It's
order
all
to
about maps.
this is a great line.
It's all about maps.
In order to maintain the air speed velocity, a swallow needs to beat its wings 43 times every second, right? I thought he was quoting the Monty Python. The Monty Python. I trades. Instead of trading a player mid-season for a pick, they're a developmental quarterback or one that we would target next year that we would get now for a player-to-player swap.
So basically trade for a player versus
are so rare.
Yeah,
though,
so you're saying not accumulate picks, but use stuff, assets now to get a developmental guy now? Yeah, Anthony Richardson would be right off the top of my head. That's the first one that I would think, if you're going to do it, you would go after him. I don't really know.
Let me see what he's saying. Is there a development quarterback or one that we target next year that we can get now for a player-to-player swap? But he's saying it instead of for a pick. So I think what you up NYG is asking, I think he's kind of like me. He wants to get
the player on
he
board
wants to
now.
make a trade, but he doesn't want to get rid of the draft picks, which I'm with him. I hate giving up draft picks. Player-to-player swaps are so rare.
See, I don't really care.
Do it. They're just so.
I don't care if we give up a draft pick if you're saying for a developmental quarterback, because that's essentially what you're doing when you draft them.
Yeah, but he's just asking. It's kind of a twofold thing. I think we've already addressed his.
Because Anthony Richardson would be the only developmental quarterback I can think of. There isn't really another.
There's Young in the Carolina.
That's true. That's true.
So, again, everyone's going to start going to me saying, "Screw that." What I'm telling you is this: is they've got to come up with a way to get a quarterback in here, and that's just one of the options.
Young makes sense. The only weird part about the Young thing is the fact that we play them after the trade deadline. So if the trade happens, it has to happen before we play them. And that would be unprecedented that you would trade a guy to a team who then you're going to play like 4 days later. It's like, but it could happen.
He wouldn't be ready to play in that quickly.
No, but it's just a share of information.
Yeah.
But don't discount it though. I actually think the Giants might be one of the teams in the running for Young. They have said that there's, of course, you know how it gets manufactured, but they have said that there's upwards of 15 teams that have inquired about Young. A lot of them are doing exactly what we're talking about. You just taking a flyer on a guy. Look at Dallas is sitting with Trey Lance, a guy that he may never play for them, but they took a flyer on him thinking maybe we could develop this guy. He was a high pick. The only other possible quarterback that could move that's young, but he's not the kind of guy you would do that with, is Jacksonville with Mac Jones. But I just don't see Mac Jones failed in New England. I don't see anybody doing that there.
And the very, very last question from Phoenix Giants fan: why do we keep spending first-round picks on cornerbacks with character issues? And it's kind of funny because when you think about Eli Apple and you think about DeAndre Baker and you think about now what we're dealing with Tay Banks, I think they're all kind of.
But did Banks have an issue coming out?
No, he didn't. And it was really. I recommend people watch it. It was really interesting. It's on the front page of BBI right now. There's a link to the position coaches' interviews yesterday, and Jerome Henderson admitted he went to bat for Tay Banks. He said, I really lobbied for him, and I have a vested interest in. And he's been very critical of Tay, and he said, I have a vested interest in seeing him succeed. I'm tied to the hip with him. And now we know Wink, because we saw it, Wink loved him too. But that's why when I watched Jerome Henderson's answers, I came away feeling better about my defense with you about you don't give up on talent. I felt like he sees him as this tremendous guy, and he basically said, you can't just play 60 great snaps in a game if there are 5 that you don't play all out. And he said you got to play 65 snaps at the same level. It can't be because those 5 snaps will ruin everything else. So
I worry that we have a few players like that.
I put him the one that's really bad was the DeAndre Baker. Let's be honest, the DeAndre Baker one was, I don't know what that was, a horrible.
Well, he had character red flags coming out. So
Yeah.
when I compared the two, and I know people like it's not the same, I get what you're saying. I'm not talking about them as people. I'm talking about when you give up on plays on a field. That's one of the biggest no-nos that you
No,
can
I get
do
it.
with
No, I
other
get it.
players. You just mentioned something, though, that makes me – this is the part where I would say now you got to question your scouting. If Tay Banks has this kind of in him, right, and we're propping him up and telling him, hey, you got to do this whole game. I noticed this with Jalen Hyatt too. Bobby Skinner put a video out a couple of times of Jalen Hyatt just not even running his pass pattern. The play wasn't supposedly coming to him, and he doesn't even come off the line of scrimmage. So if that's something that we've kind of not really taken into account, there is a bit about heart
Well, is
that
that
you
a
need to pay
scouting or is
attention
that a
to.
coaching issue, though?
Well, I'm just saying is if you noticed it, if it ever showed itself in film in college, you better it better have a higher weight when you're judging people. Then I want a guy with heart almost as much as I want him with pure talent. Pure talent is great, but if you don't have the heart for
No,
it,
I
there's
get
a whole
you.
bunch of
No,
guys
it's
like
valid.
that.
It's valid. We just don't know enough about what's actually going on behind the scenes.
True.
But we do know this. Jalen's not playing, and we know that Tay is.
He didn't get a snap in the Pittsburgh game, if I remember correctly. Do you remember for Jalen Hyatt?
I don't think he did. I don't.
Now, I know he was coming off the rib injury, but if you're active, you think you at least get on the field.
I don't think he did. Well, our first round draft pick got on for one play.
Hey, man, come on. That was a critical play.
So, well, on that note, we probably should wrap it up. We're at past 90 minutes. But we could do this all day. I mean, that's the problem is you and I could just sit around and just do this. Imagine what we do if they were winning. This would be great. We'd be all excited.
So what do you foresee happening on Sunday? Real quick.
I think this is going to be a really important game in terms of fans being fed up. I think because it's going to be right in our face that Jaden Daniels is right in front of us, and Daniel Jones is on the other side. And now if Jaden Daniels plays like crap or gets hurt, then that's a different story. But if he plays like he's been playing and Daniel plays like he's been playing, and it's right in front of us against a team that we've owned that now is in first place and has a legitimate shot at winning the NFC East just because of the quarterback, it's going to be his biggest slap in the face in reality. I mean, there's a great thread on BBI. I hate saying this, but wouldn't it be better if Jaden Daniels scores 4 touchdowns and lights it up this weekend, because it'll tell everybody at Gint Central, it's the quarterback, dummy. This is
the problem is I think they know that the big negative if Daniels does something like that is just it looks really bad for our defense and our defensive coordinator.
I agree. And I think this is a really big game for the defense more than anything else. I mean, we talk about Banks, but the run defense has to start a rebound here. And they have to sort of not give up. If they're losing, if we're losing 10-0, finish the game. Don't let them get 2 cheap touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Finish it up and make the game 10-0. Have it finish that way.
Right. I don't know what's going to happen game wise. I keep going back and forth. I think the Giants can win this game. They can. They could have beaten Pittsburgh. They certainly could have beaten Cincinnati. This is a team that can win games. They just don't. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But I will say this: if we struggle, and we're just not doing a lot early, and they do let's say they take a 10, 14-point lead. Couple things to watch. If Darius Slayton suddenly isn't on the field later in the game, starts coming off the field, and we're still kind of in it, but we're not there, he's being moved. If Ojolari starts not coming on the field, he's being moved. But let's say opposite happens. We win. We're winning this game. We're playing really well defensively. It's not a great offensive game, but we're winning the game. Watch around the league. If Arizona wins, and that kind of gives them another win, I think the 49ers are off. If the Rams lose to Seattle, who has struggled, now pay attention to that, because I think trades are going to be possible one way or the other. We're either going to move guys or we're going to bring somebody in. If they think they can still win and they had a different quarterback, We'll do it. And then the other one is to watch Carolina. I think
We
Bryce
gotta
Young
get
will
a
get moved.
Yeah, we got to get a quarterback at some point. I just don't know where it's gonna be. I mean, and Go Terps Plus, and we keep bringing him up. He said Jalen Jones isn't going anywhere. He's going to be here next year.
He's not coming back.
I'm like, oh my God, please! But Go Terps has been right by so many things. I'm not.
Yeah, but they be
anymore.
I'll say this though: you can be right and still not really be right. Just because
give him credit.
No. I'm not. Listen. Them losing is true. Them being an abject, like they're just completely lost, rudderless at sea is not true. We've already seen it. If you just had a different quarterback in there, we're probably.
But they didn't get the quarterback.
They didn't get. I understand.
And the other thing that out of Hard Knocks was we learned that they had no intention of, again, unless they selectively edit it, and they might have done that because some of that thing reeks of editing.
Oh, absolutely.
Walking down the hallway, Shane is at the combine and saying that they need to get a backup quarterback just as insurance in case Daniel's not ready. It wasn't like we're going to bring in another veteran to compete with Daniel for the starting job. They never said that. My position would have been, and I think Go Terps' position would have been, you bring somebody in here. Don't hand Daniel the job. Daniel's got to earn the job.
See, I don't think they did, though. And I do think that was editing. I don't think they handed him the job per se. I actually think that they didn't think he'd be ready, number one. Two, they wanted one of the three guys. They talked about them very specifically. Williams, gone. No way you're going to get him. Daniels, we made an inquiry. They weren't moving. They made their target at 3. They thought we could work this out with New England. New England wanted the world because they need a quarterback just as bad as we do. So then they didn't go. They went and got Locke. I think they thought about keeping Tyrod, but his cost was too much to get the guards.
Well, yeah.
And so when we went and picked up the 2 offensive linemen, you're kind of like, now what do you do? Drew Locke.
He got hurt too, and Locke got hurt.
He got hurt, but he didn't look good. But you don't know that he's not going to look good. I actually think he might have competed. Then they said, no, we're not having a competition, because at that point, you're like, okay, he's not as good, and so.
I prefer to see Locke now. I prefer to see Locke.
Oh, because of where we are.
Yeah.
But
it's just more interesting.
But from day one, that's not the case.
Like Tommy Maddox, then we lose another game? That doesn't matter. But
from day one, that's not the case, because we saw it in playing Detroit. Locke looked horrible in the preseason. He was bad.
Right.
DeVito looked better.
But so what did Daniel Jones look in his first preseason game? Remember that?
Understood. Oh, absolutely.
So again, I'm not going to. I know what I have in Daniel Jones. I think I know what I've got in Locke. I think I know what I got in DeVito. But I'm done with Jones. There's too much of a risk. Move on. Play somebody else. If they're worse, so be it. You're not losing anything, but we might gain something. There's nothing. In other words, there's nothing to lose, and there's something to gain. Where the other way around, if he gets hurt, there's a lot to lose. I just don't understand the rationale. If we were 4-4, and the division is what it is, I completely understand playing Daniel Jones still.
Sure,
but we're not. We're not 4-4 because of Daniel Jones. So
that's legitimately true.
So.
Yeah, I agree with you. So yeah, watch the trade market. It'll be interesting. Again, we're either going to be sellers or buyers. I don't think we'll do nothing. I think we'll do something. It's just a matter of what happens this weekend.
Yeah, I could see us doing nothing and just everybody going
Yeah, that's true too.
I don't know. I just hate waiting for this season to be over when it's not even, it's halfway over. This sucks. This sucks. I mean, we're supposed to be enjoying this, and it sucks. And now it's, and the excitement now is on Washington, which is ridiculous. They were supposed to be rebuilding, and they're jumping for joy and having fun, and we're, and again, why the quarterback? So
the good thing is that a lot of people worry about cheap wins, like weeks 15, 16, 17, weeks 18. I don't see that happening, just because everything's kind of come back. The Eagles are still going to be battling probably with Washington at the very end. So that last game is going to be, that's going to mean something to them. Indianapolis, assuming that they, with Flacco, can stay in things, their game is going to mean something to them late in the year. We still have another game with Dallas, who is still trying to be doing something. The only ones I worry about are like Tampa, New Orleans, who are injury plagued and coming to us. Those are just some of the things that are there.
But what happens if they bench Daniel at the bye and they go with DeVito and DeVito ends up winning half his games? That it'll be so damning for to be like, why
that would look really bad.
Why didn't you make this switch earlier again? I mean, maybe not even winning. What if he's throwing touchdown passes? So what if there's a game where he throws 3 touchdown passes, and a game he throws 2 touchdown passes? And so what if he finishes? What if DeVito comes in after the bye and doubles Daniel Jones's TD passes? That would be so damning to this organization in a way too, because it'd be like, well, why were you wasting these other games when we were playing these other games that we lost by a few points? And you had numbnuts in there. I mean, I brought that up last time. So,
well, the only thing that there is one other train of thought, and that is, we've talked about this one, is it's an edict that you have to play Jones.
I don't know.
I'm not really, again, we're not there. It's so weird. That's the part I don't understand, but your point is valid. That would actually be the one reason you might fire Daboll, is if you did put the guy in and he ended up doing a lot better. You're sitting there going, why the hell didn't you do this before?
Right.
You kept telling me it was the best chance to win.
Put him on the roster. You kept him on the roster. So you must have seen something, or you would have put him on the practice squad. And if you don't think much of him and he signed with somebody else, so be it. But you liked him, and you left him on, and then he comes in, and for the second year in a row, he's the guy who's throwing touchdown passes. So that in a way would be.
Do you see at any point? Last question for you. Do you see at any point in this game that Daniel Jones gets benched? Do you see that happening?
Yes, I don't think it's going to happen, but yes, I think they could get to the point where he looks so bad at home, and the fans are so fed up with it. And if they're in the third quarter and they still don't have a point, I could easily say that's it. Now, do I predict it? No, because I still think the bye is probably the thing. But I wouldn't also, as I've said before, I wouldn't be surprised if they were going to do it. They would do it before Carolina, because you're playing on a neutral field, out of the country. There'll be less pressure against an opponent that's not, all world. That would be the time to do it. So yes, I could see this being the week, or next week being the time where they say that's it. I just hope he doesn't get hurt, because if he gets hurt, I'm going to lose it. I was really worried if he gets hurt, because this is so stupid at this point.
That Steeler game, and in the highlight video that we did with the kazoo play. Yeah. By the way, everybody loved that. If you look, there's one where Jones is being brought down. That's the play I'm talking about, where he went down head first. He got up and he was moving his head around. I was like, oh my God. Oh, I'm like, no. That is the worst case scenario. The neck piece is knee, whatever, that would be bad. The neck is career altering, which means we're on the hook for all that money. We don't want any of that to happen. I do think there's a chance he gets benched. If we go 3 and out, and the Boo Birds come in, and because then the wheels always come off for Daniel when that happens at home. He never turns that back around.
Walking depression appears.
Yeah, it'd be more like walking suicide. But anyway,
so on that note, Saturday, it's a beautiful day. Go out and enjoy.
Go and enjoy. Watch some college games later if you want to. Cam Ward's playing, I guess, today. I think he's playing today. That's a guy to keep an eye on. Shadir Sanders, I don't know. Who knows where we're going after this. But anyway, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll review the game. And who knows, we might have a really cool, funny video to start that one off with too. So again, we appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time.